the one, the only, Taylor Swift, everybody.
And the VMA goes to
Taylor Swift! Music Award goes to Artist of the Year, Taylor Swift.
And the Grammy goes to Folklore, Taylor Swift!
We're like, sorry, was I loud? In my own house that I bought with the songs that I wrote about my own life.
In just one day of sales, it became the top-selling album of the year already. Midnight's broke Spotify's record for most streams in a day. Today, the top 10 songs on Apple Music and Spotify are from Midnight's. Rolling Stone called Midnight's an instant classic in their 5-star review. Rolling Stone! This album is on track to sell well over 1 million copies in its first week. That is history, buddy.
Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kai and this is Hot People Read. If you haven't heard already, Taylor Swift's new album Midnights came out last week and I'm obsessed. Like, I love it. And in honor of that, I thought it would be fun to kind of give book recommendations based off her most 3 previous albums, starting with Midnights. So the first song we're talking about is Lavender Haze. And for that song, I gave The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as the book recommendation. If I'm looking down, it's because I have my notes. So, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, if you haven't heard about it already, it's about a woman who becomes famous during the 1950s. And during that time period, she marries 7 different men. Yes, 7. And it's a book about gossip, old Hollywood, glitz and glamour, and the difficulties she faces going through, I guess, being an actress during that time period as a young, beautiful woman. And at the age of 79, she decides to reveal a tell-all interview style. And it's kind of about, I guess, her revealing the truth behind her come up and why she married so many different people and who is her one true love. I chose this book for the song because it kind of mirrors what Taylor Swift was singing about, being in the public eye and everybody wanting to know everything about your personal life, your love life, why you do this, scrutinizing and nitpicking at everything you do. And both in the song and both Evelyn Hugo reach a point where they're like, I'm gonna do what I want. Specifically the line, the 1950s shiz they want from me. Like, is that not so perfectly fitted for The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as it's set in the 1950s? Like, the second song I want to talk about is Maroon. And the book I chose for that is Normal People, which I recently read, actually. So, this book is about 2 unlikely characters who find themselves in a never-ending, tumultuous relationship. We have Marianne. I don't want to go too into it because I do want to make a whole video about this book, but we have Connell and Marianne who kind of grow up together, and it's about them going through the ups and downs of secondary school, which is where the book starts, up until after university, which is around when the book starts to wrap up and finish. And I chose Maroon for this song. I chose Normal People for the song Maroon just because of, I guess, the commentary about relationships, how complicated it can be, and growing apart, coming together, growing apart. Specifically the line, the rust that grew between telephones, the lips I used to call home. That perfectly captures the relationship we see between our 2 main characters, Marianne and Connell. And yeah, I can't wait to make a video about this book, which I will do very soon. The next song I want to talk about is Antihero, and for this song I chose Vanity Fair. This is just, the cover is so beautiful. I love this edition. Yeah, I know you're not supposed to judge books by its cover, but how could you not pick it up? Like, the gold, the covering, oh, the little ribbon, it's just such a beautiful book, and it's so small, so cute. Anyway, off track. So this book is a classic and it's set in the, I'm gonna butcher this word, Neopolinic? Neopolinic? Hold on.
2,000 years later.
Napoleonic.
Napoleonic. It's set during the Napoleonic time, and it's about two main characters, Becky Sharp, who is described as strong-willed, and she's a young woman. They're both young women. And our other main character, Emmy Sedley, who is the more good-natured, wealthier woman who kind of fits the society's ideal of how a woman should be during that time. And it's about their adventures into love, marriage, and family. This book I chose for anti-hero because Becky Sharp and Amelia are two very different characters. Becky Sharp is the more rebellious one who kind of steers away from society's expectations of what it means to be a woman during that time. And she is kind of viewed as an anti-hero. She's vilified, and some people would describe this book as the downfall of Becky Sharp. I haven't finished it yet. It's a very long book and I have big book fear, but one day I will get to it. But even the first 10 pages, you can see the very big differences between how Becky is viewed and treated versus Amelia. And yeah, I think she definitely fits that anti-hero vibe. Nobody really likes her. The next song I'm talking about is Snow on the Beach, and for that song I chose The Rosie Project. I got this book from the library, so I don't have a physical copy of it, but I'll put it somewhere on the screen, whatever. So The Rosie Project is a novel that centers a professor in genetics called Don, and Don struggles to form romantic relationships with women, and to combat that, he decided to build a questionnaire to kind of filter out who his ideal woman would be through various speed datings, and whoever would meet that criteria based off his questionnaire, kind of like a checklist. I think some of them were quite, if I remember, there was one she can't smoke, if she was a smoker, she gets a point ticked off. If her BMI is a certain number, another point gets ticked off. So yeah, in the beginning of the book, he's not the most likable character, to be honest with you, but as the book progresses, we also get to see Don progress and change and develop as he starts to fall in love with this woman who he never thought he could find himself with. She kind of goes completely against the criteria of what he set himself out for. And the song Snow on the Beach is just such a heartwarming song about falling in love and the sweetness of it, which we eventually see with our main character Don and his new love interest. The next song I'm talking about is You're on Your Own, Kid. This song is really sad. But anyway, the book I chose for this, I also got it from the library, so I don't have a physical copy. It'll go somewhere. Is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world. I spoke about this book in my previous video, but I think it suits so well for this song. If you don't know what the book is about, it's about our main character Layla, who has died, and she has 10 minutes and 38 seconds left after her heart stops beating. After that time period, she has officially left the planet. Her soul has gone wherever her soul has gone. And the next 2/3 of the novel talks about her life, her childhood, and how she ended up where she is, dead. It talks about her early childhood in Turkey and how she ended up in a brothel in Istanbul. It also goes into the hardships and difficulties she and her friends face in this harsh world. I chose this book for You're on Your Own, Kid because both the song and the novel talk about longing, wanting to find love, and wanting to feel accepted only to be tossed aside by society and realizing that you could only depend on yourself. Which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. The next song I'm talking about is Vigilante Snickles. I'm not getting in trouble. I've barely started my channel, so apologies, but we're calling it Vigilante Snickles. The book I chose for this is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. Marie Lu is an author she's slowly becoming my favorite. I've read 2 of her trilogies. But anyway, we're talking about The Young Elites. there is a widespread plague, and our main character, Adelina, survives that plague as it mainly affected children. And the children who survived the plague developed these strange markings, and because of those markings, they are ostracized and shunned away from society. Because Adelina survived the plague, she is now marked with silver hair, and she lost her left eye, I think. Either way, she has one eye which she covers with an eye patch. And because everyone knows who survived the plague and who didn't, because of their markings, they're kind of seen as bad luck. It seems that negative things start to happen whenever someone comes in contact with these marked children, like our main character, Adelina. And after being marked, she decides to run away from her abusive father and joins a underground society called the Dagger Society for these young children who grew up ostracized and shunned from society because they were survivors of the plague. And it turns out that the people in this society developed magical abilities. Our main girl Adelina, she developed magical abilities which she later discovers. And it's about her and this group of people who kind of want to get revenge, take back what was taken from them, and make their way back into a new world where everybody is accepted. But through that, we see how this desire and passion for change starts to corrupt our main character, and she kind of turns into something that we didn't see. We see this progress through each book, and I absolutely loved this series. It's one of my favorite ones. I don't think it's talked enough. It's popular, I guess, but it's nowhere near talked enough in the way that it should be. And I loved it. I love stories about villains and anti-heroes, and Adelina is so beautifully written, and she perfectly fits the song. Wow, I spoke a lot about that book and my mouth is dry. Like I said, I was going to talk about Taylor Swift's 3 most recent albums. That was Midnight, and now we're going to talk about Evermore. So the first song I have for Evermore is Cowboy Like Me. And the book I chose for Cowboy Like Me is Six of Crows, one of my favorite books ever. Like, I love this book. If you don't know, Six of Crows is a book about 6 characters who are ostracized from society. They're kind of misfits. They don't really blend in with the world around them. And they band together to plan the ultimate, I always get this word wrong, heist. The ultimate heist that this town has ever seen. If you know Shadow of Bone, it's in that same universe, just a different characters, different time period. It's about revenge, and I chose this book specifically for Cowboy Like Me because both the song and the book talk about these 2 people who are con artists, like Kaz, our main character, and Inej, our other main character, who slowly start to play the dangerous game of love. There's a lot of what ifs and who's playing who. Is this real? Is this not? Back and forth between the 2 in both the song and the book. And literally just the whole song is literally Kaz and Inej. I can't find a song that fits them better. Talks about rumors and gossip and struggling to trust each other, and knowing that if they do fall in head first, it's going to hurt a lot. Yeah, I love this song. I can't listen to it without thinking of Inej and Kaz. I hope if you read the book, you understand what I mean. The next song I have is Marjorie. And for that, I chose Legendborn, another one of my favorite books. I have like 10,000 favorite books. Anyway, Marjorie for Legendborn. Legendborn, it's about a girl, Bree, who enters this university at the age of 16. This university has a section for underage people, so people between 16 and 17, who are smart enough to finish secondary school early, and they therefore can enter university at an earlier stage. I think it's called early college or early access college. So even though she's 16, she's in an institution where there are 18, 19, 20-year-olds at the same time. And it's about her moving to this new institution in the middle of nowhere, if I remember correctly. I think it's like in a small town. I don't remember where it's set, but it's somewhere in America. And she moves there with her best friend. And together they discover this strange magic that's going on. And it's a novel based off the legend of King Arthur, and Bree gets involved in that secret society and it kind of unwells from there. But I specifically chose this book for Marjorie because Marjorie is about, I think is it Taylor Swift's grandmother who's passed away? But someone close to Taylor Swift passed away, which inspired the song. And same thing with Legend Born. Her mother, Bree, passed away. This is not a spoiler, it's literally the first line after her mother dies in an accident. So both the book and the song talk about grief and loss, which I think Tracy Dion did wonderfully. The way she describes, I guess, the process of grieving a mother or just somebody close to you was so harrowing and dark. The same thing goes for the song. They're both very emotional and they both talk about the loss of someone who was a great, figure in their life. And I think if you read this book, you will really understand how well grief can be written in a way that is new and cuts through you. That's that one. And the next song I have from Evermore is Evermore. And the book rec I have for that is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I listened to this book on audiobook, so I don't have a physical copy. It'll be somewhere here. But everyone is raving about this book for all the right reasons. If you haven't come across this book, it's about Jeanette McCurdy, who was in iCarly, which I loved growing up. She played Sam Puckett. But this book is more about her tumultuous relationship with her mother, who from a very early age pushes her into acting and introduces her to calorie restricting as a form of keeping herself young, as in keeping Jeanette McCurdy young so that she can appear attractive to casting agents, because ageism. And it's about the trauma she endures through dealing with a mother who has severe mental health issues but refuses to get help, and who also is dying of cancer. And I chose the book for this song because Evermore is, when I listen to Evermore, it's a song of processing trauma, the different stages of it, especially the lines, what was it? I thought this pain would be forevermore, compared to the final verse, which is like, I knew this pain wouldn't be forevermore. So it's about the transitions between before the trauma, after the trauma, and everything in between. And I'm Glad My Mum Died did a perfect, I don't want to say perfect because I don't think it's right to use the word perfect when describing trauma, but she described her trauma in a way that was so real and realistic and just painful. But we get to see that process of her going from I'm grieving, I'm hurt, to no, this person abused me, I can still love them from a distance, but now I can move on and move forward. And I think if you are somebody who knows what it's like to deal with to have a difficult relationship with your mom or just a parent, I think you would really appreciate this book. But bear in mind, there are trigger warnings of eating disorders and suicidal ideation and abuse, which many people unfortunately can relate to. The last song I have for this album is Right Where You Left Me, and for that song I chose Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Again, I spoke about this in a previous video. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. And I chose this book for that song because it's a book about a time-traveling cafe set in Japan where people can come in and drink a special tea where they can transport in time to visit their loved one. It's a book about regret and wondering what would have happened if I had a chance to see that person again. And you can see anyone, but there are specific rules. And one of the characters in this book breaks that rule, and we see her being stuck in this time-traveling cafe, which is very similar to the book Right Where You Left Me. The lyrics go so well with it. Like, help, I'm still at the restaurant, still sitting in a corner I haunt. That perfectly describes one of the characters in this book, and they both, I guess both stories are about moving on, struggling to move on and being held back by it. But of course in this book the character literally can't move, she's stuck, she's right where she was left, and she's kind of stuck in that hurt and pain and she can't move on, similar to the protagonist in Right Where You Left Me. I think this book goes so well with that song, and I cannot pick a more perfect pairing. Those are the recs for Evermore. Now the final album I'm going to talk about is Folklore, and the first song I'm talking about is The One. And for that song I chose The Sun Is Also a Star. This is a pretty popular YA coming of age love story from, was it 2017? And it was also turned into a movie, so yeah, it's pretty popular. I think most people know about it. But in case you don't, it's about two characters, Natasha and Daniel, who meet through twisted fate, but they are very different people. Natasha is Jamaican American and Daniel is Korean American, and they, through fate and weird encounters, they stumble and meet and develop a romantic relationship. But because life is horrible, they get torn apart, and the questions of what could have been, lost potential, possible love is pretty much what this book talks about, similar to the song The One, which from my perspective is a song about wondering what could have happened if you did stay together, if things did work out, could it have worked out? And that's something we see with this book. And I love this book. I read it a few years ago, and I just remember the feeling of frustration I felt, because I love a good love story where at the end they come together and it's your typical happy Hollywood ending, which is very different from what I read in this book. And I think it goes so well with The One because they both talk about what could have been. The next two songs I'm talking about is The Last Great Dynasty, and for that book I chose The Great Gatsby. My sister's actually borrowing that book right now, so I'll put it up on the screen somewhere. And if you don't know The Great Gatsby, it's an American classic set in the 1920s, where we have our main character Nick Carraway. Is it Carraway or Carraway? Yeah, Nick Carraway, who interacts with the self-made billionaire Jay Gatsby. During this time, wealth was very limited to old money, and being born into a wealthy family, that's how you became rich. You just were. But we are reaching an age where people are making a name for themselves, like our character Jay Gatsby, who didn't come from a wealthy background. And I chose this book for the song because in the song it's about these two people who, I guess, are thrown into this wild, fantastic world of money and wealth, and they're both two unlikely characters who kind of twist up and shake the world around them with their extravagant parties and the gossip, the glitz and the glamour, which is similar to what we see with Jay Gatsby and our other main character Daisy. Through later in the book they develop their own relationship, and it's very similar to the relationship in the song in terms of Jay throwing extravagant parties to attract people, specifically Daisy, and how they are surrounded by gossip and politics. And it's called The Great American Dynasty, The Great Gatsby. They both talk about the American dream and, I guess, striving for perfection in terms of wealth and family. And I think both the song and the book talk about those elements in a very candid way. And the final song I have is Invisible String. I love this song. It's so sweet. I think it's so cute. And I believe it's based off like ancient Chinese mythology or something like that. But it's such a cute song. I love this song. And for this song I chose Never Let Me Go, which is not a very cutesy, romantic, whimsical book. Never Let Me Go is a book written by Kazuo Ishiguro, a Japanese author, where we have it's like a dystopian society where human cloning has, I guess, reached its peak. We are at a stage in terms of science where we can clone humans, and in this story the clones are used for mass human organ donation. So people are literally cloned for the sake of donating their organs. It's a book about the ethics of that, and I guess humans playing God versus science. I could literally see our world becoming that. That's the scariest part of dystopian novels, is that they're not so unrealistic that I could never see it happening, because I definitely could, especially with this book. But it's set in Britain, and it focuses on three main characters, Ruth, Tommy and Kathy. I chose Invisible String for Never Let Me Go because Invisible String is a song about these two peoples who meet and fall in love, but as the relationship develops, they notice that there were many different pinpoints where their lives interacted without them knowing each other, whether it's meeting in the same shop or, you know, having similarities of parks. And if you listen to the song, you know what I'm talking about. That's similar in Never Let Me Go, where we have our childhood best friends to lovers. They are always intertwined together. They are always stuck to each other. They have this invisible string, if you could say, that pulls them all. And we see the difficulties of this relationship because they're so intertwined together, but they live in a world that will pull them apart and will turn them into, not enemies, but put them in positions where they may have to hurt the other person despite being so closely intertwined and linked. And I love how Ishiguro breaks down the relationships and talks about, I guess, ethics of science and where things may lead to in the future. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. I absolutely loved Midnights. I'm not sure if it's my favorite album just yet. I need to listen to it a few more times. My favorite album is still Folklore and Red, and my favorite song from this album is Lavender Haze, Karma, and Midnight Rain. I just love those songs. I know everyone's loving Antihero, which I get, but those three are the ones that resonate with me the most. If you could so kindly leave a comment below and say what your favorite Taylor Swift album is, or your favorite song from her is, or don't, just thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Goodbye.